dive in. Don't be scared. You got to go in, balls deep. You really do. You can't go in half-assed with it. You can feed me out with those if you need to. But that's the best honest advice I can give. And that's the only reason that Mike and I have got vision to where we are now, is that we've invested in ourselves, both financially and emotionally, and trusted ourselves, trusted each other 110%. When we sat down, we've made that decision together, and then we've gone balls to the wall to reach that goal. So you've got to have something that you're aiming for and then try and exceed it.
Welcome to Phys with me, Aaron King, a podcast for exercise physiologists and health professionals wanting to grow and scale in business. Welcome, Adam and Michael from Vision Health. Thanks for jumping on, boys.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks for having us on.
No worries. So I've got Adam King and Michael Usher. Adam's no relation to me, so just putting that out there. Not that it would matter, but great surname, but no relation. And Mick, yours is all right too. So I'll take that. No worries.
Appreciate it.
No worries. So obviously had a bit of a chat, known you for a little while, both of you. Been an EP for a little while, a long while. Today, funny story, I got my ESSA 10-year member shirt. I don't know, have you got one yet or?
Yeah, mine showed up
turned
on
up today,
Monday, I think, yeah.
Okay, so I must have been doing the same thing. I thought to myself, I feel like I've been a member for a bit longer, but turns out maybe since they changed from ACE, was that when you were on board as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So moving along, you guys have been EPs, or Adam specifically, been EPs for a little while. So how did you start Vision Health?
Well, it's quite a story. I'm looking at it from this end. So I graduated my degree at University of the Sunshine Coast in 2003, relocated back to our hometown in Toowoomba and really just took care to getting some experience in a gym, working just out of a locally owned facility for maybe 12 to 18 months or so before the EP side of things really started to gather some momentum. And I was just lucky, I think, to be right at the front end of that in Toowoomba and one of maybe two EPs that jumped on and was doing a fair bit of musculoskeletal rehab with Work Cover Queensland back then and some third-party insurers, etc. And then once we got our provider number and that Medicare stuff kicked on, that kind of really accelerated what we were doing and kind of transitioned me out of that gym-based environment into a bit of a personal training studio, which was a bit more conducive to that allied health. So inside that studio, there was a dietitian and a massage therapist, and then myself. I was doing a lot of personal training at that point in time, but then doing a lot of that musculoskeletal and then building into more of that chronic disease management stuff. And then, just by I suppose knuckling in and building a bit of a name up, we kind of developed that. My business partner, and then at the time, built the EP side up enough that we could separate the personal training business and the EP. And that's really where Vision Exercise Physiology, which is what we were initially known as, was born at.
Yeah. And now you've diversified a bit. So you're known as Vision Health. You've added a few strings to the bow, so to speak.
Yeah, we've had a few have come, few have gone. We're building in new ones as well. So we're currently running a handful of sports scientists, which do a lot of our athlete development stuff, specifically for predominantly teenagers in that youth representative window within Toowoomba, and some on the other end as well, right up to a couple of masters athletes that come in. We have had a dietitian in the past, couple of dietitians in the past. We're no longer providing that service at the moment, but it may be something we look at getting back into. Obviously, the exercise physiology side of things, which runs both here and in our Grafton clinic as well. We've got a killer team down there in Grafton. And then we've just recently brought a physiotherapist on board and is building up a great little following just in the month or two that he's been here. And really, we're probably double guessing why we didn't bring a physio in sooner. It's something that we were a bit resistant to for some reason. I'm not sure why. Probably just that, preconceived idea that EPs and physio should be button heads, which obviously when you graduated as well, Aaron, it was really two sides of the story, wasn't it? Whereas now, definitely much more of a collaborative approach, and it's really brought our business along even just in the past 3 or 4 months that he's been on board with us.
Yeah, I think that there's enough people for everybody. Like there's so many people out there that need to be helped and can be helped. You look at the stats of people that need exercise, movement, chronic disease management, some form of therapy, and it's probably above 50%. So my philosophy is, you know what, there's enough people for everybody. So it doesn't really matter if, you don't connect with everybody, as long as you connect with enough people in your niche. And you mentioned something before that I don't think a lot of people listening to this might have noticed, that you mentioned that when Medicare came along. So I knew exactly what you were talking about, but I'm not actually sure a lot of people listening would probably understand that EPs weren't registered for Medicare initially when I started as an EP, and I'm not even sure we were called EPs at that point, but who knows? It's been so long ago. I've graduated for almost 20 years, and I think you're the same. Last time we had a chat, we both graduated the same year in 03, I think it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, just for those listening at home, EPs weren't always on the Medicare list, and it was a bit of a catalyst to join in with the other allied health professionals when we were when we reached parity, I guess.
Yeah, there's that perception of reaching parity. I think we always thought that we were on the same level, but it was nice to get that recognition from, a governing body like Medicare that, our input into the health of the community is just as well valued as those across the more traditional allied health services. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Mick, you joined Adam a couple of years down the line. So tell us how you two met and joined up as a team.
Yeah, so I graduated from James Cook University 2007, and I got offered a job at the end of that as just having a sport and exercise science degree, and came in underneath Adam in 2008. And realistically, I effectively was a prac student, I guess, but I did all my clinical hours up until October 2008 underneath Adam to gain my accreditation in exercise physiology, and then worked alongside underneath Adam for a number of years, really, probably another 12 or 18 months. When I came in, there was a lot happening with the studio that we were working out of, the personal training studio. Troy, who owned that building or that business, bought a big commercial gym, and the personal training studio shifted across over there. So that was mid-2008 too, just after I got my EP. And I effectively had two options at the time, which was either go work somewhere else for a little bit more money. I think I was earning about $30,000 a year, 35 at a push, and
which was well above award wage. Just like at that point in time,
we've established everything we did was a long time ago.
Yeah. And so it was either go find another job. I got the ability. Then he said, go out on your own, take your patients, take your client list, and pay me back some later. So that was the choice I made, and then as things kind of continued on, the changes happened, and then, Willow's there. I got to buy into the EP business that Adam and Troy were running.
Yeah. So now you've leveled up, I guess we can say, as part of the partnership. So what do you find your biggest challenges are together? Do you have major challenges? I know we've spoken, you haven't identified too many of those, but do you have any that are coming up? Like, what are the challenges of a partnership?
I think from my perspective, there's definitely more positives than negatives with where our relationship and our partnership is. I suppose the negative things is, and I wouldn't even call it a negative, it's probably just something that we have to bounce off each other. Every decision needs to be made as a pair. And I think we're pretty lucky in that we're very much on the same level with how we envisage vision being and have over the past decade. And where we want it to be over the next decade as well. So we're pretty well aligned with our vision, and our values are very, very well aligned as well. But I suppose compared to someone like yourself, who is, let's say, a sole practitioner or a sole owner or a sole director, those decisions you can make on a whim, I suppose, because you know what's going on in your head. And I suppose the difference Mike and I have is that we need to explain what's going on in our head to each other and then come to some level of agreement. So, I liken it much to a marriage in that, it would be easy if one person could just do it all, but that's going to upset that book card. And in the same breath, the opinion from the other side is what makes a happy family, and that's what can pull people back in online again if things get a little skewy or a little bit astray, or if things are trudging along slowly, which tends to be more, that's the way I go, a little bit safer. It's good to have someone that can say, hey, well, how about we try this from left field? And generally then we can find something in the middle that works for everyone.
Yeah. So I guess, Mick, does that mean that you're the one left field and Adam's the one behind? Is that what I just took from that?
Yeah, you probably you could read between the lines there a little bit. I sort of float a little bit, I guess. I like shiny things in a sense that if I see something
Same.
I think it could work, like, oh, that would be really cool. And then I'll throw it to Adam. He's like, well, put a business case together for me to show me how that's going to work. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, but we do, he brings you back down to a level, which is really good. I tend to react to things as well. So it's a really good sounding board for me with those situations where I am going to react first, probably before I think. Whereas I can usually Adam can talk me off a cliff when it comes to that.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing to have because sometimes I've got no one to bounce the ideas off and say, or I do, I use my team and they've been with me for a number of years, many of them. So I do actually use them as the sounding board and their role is to try to get the ramblings out of my mind and put it into some semblance of detailed format so they can carry it out. But I use my team as a sounding board, but in the same time, it would probably be beneficial to have somebody closer in the ownership team that you could bounce ideas off before it comes to that. Because I'm also known to get distracted by shiny things. I think it's an attribute of an entrepreneur or somebody in business that there's you're looking at something beyond, and sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees, so to speak. So it is a challenge. So you need someone to see it on your behalf.
Yeah, I think having that, that equal investment in the business just brings that level, that playing field back on parity again. We most definitely use our clinic managers, our Grafton and our trauma clinic managers in a lot of the discussions with, how about this? What about, and get them involved with some of that decision making as well. But as you mentioned, there's definitely a level that their input probably isn't going to have as much impact, especially on that top end business side of things. So I think that's one of the perks of having Mike, sitting beside me in the office is that we can have those little off the cuff chats, and we make outside of work as well, which makes it a really cool relationship in that, you'll get a text message or a voicemail from Mike on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock when he's just had this buzz in his head, like, hey, what about this? And, I see it in the morning because got a young family. Well, I've got a family and I'm in bed by then and I'm old. See it on Sunday morning. Go, yeah, well.
You missed him at 5 a.m. in the morning. Missed you at 5 a.m. when you get up and your kids wake you up and you're like, hey.
We're right. So that's that's one of the big perks, I think, is that, we're clearly on the same level and we're happy to have those easy discussions, but the hard discussions as well.
Oh, yeah. You've got a young family too, Mixer. I don't know why you're up at 11 because I'm not up at 11 either.
There's a very rare occurrence there where it happens.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think there is something in what you said before where, you can rely on the people around you and the team that you build, clinic managers, employees and things like that. But there's obviously another layer that they might not consider that you need to consider, as obviously it's going to maybe affect your family and you personally and financially, both physically and mentally, on another layer than other team members might. So, I guess having someone that can understand the business owner needs and the business owner mindset, even if your team is great, there's just an extra layer of complexity to how you're trying to manage it and things like. So you've obviously got a lot of sports science and things in your team. Like, how did that come about? Did you specifically choose a niche to really want to go down that, or how do you develop the niche that you have?
This is a great question for Mike to ask you.
That's one of Mike's shiny ideas that worked out.
This is one of the ones that we knuckled through for a few years before it started to pay dividends, but I'll let him tell you the story on this one.
I had a mate.
All good stories start like that. Did you have a few beers at the time and then something came of it? Is that simply how good stories start?
Yeah, I don't know if there are any beers involved, but we went to uni. We played basketball together at school level, went to uni together, and effectively a few different avenues. He started education with his sports science, dropped out education, needed a job. At the end of his sports science degree, was looking to move back to Toowoomba, and I thought, we could probably put a sports science on. We did have a few EPs at the time, and it was an arm that we didn't have. And realistically, I think I first thought about it because I wanted to service the state league basketball team, but that was kind of good in. And that's sort of how it all came about, I guess. He kind of came in as a sports scientist, not really knowing what sort of patients we could service with him, and tried to build a product.
And he did. It was a fantastic product. He's since moved on from us, but he left a bit of a legacy as far as building up, the foundation of our sports science arm. He did a lot of work early on building his own networks. We obviously had the EP networks all sorted out, but he was the one trudging out to some of the private schools doing work in and out of those. A lot of the sporting teams, the basketball team local here, the Mountaineers, he actually played and captained in that eventually, but kind of got us in there, was doing a lot of work in around that. Plus, just his connections through sport alone was bringing a lot of athletes in. And the evolution kind of built from one-on-one personal training based into this, I think we got 50 athletes in our athlete development program now, which, runs for up to 25, 30 hours a week and is servicing all different manner of athletes, all different ages, all different sports, rehabilitation from injuries and surgeries, injury prevention. We're doing a lot of work now with Futsal Queensland, Futsal Australia.
Yeah, Southwest Queensland Futsal Academy.
Southwest Queensland Futsal. So getting in on the bottom end there with a lot of their athletes, doing some testing and some programming. So this, little idea that Mike, 10, 12 years ago, coming in and say, hey, can we give my mate a job? Has paid off most definitely to this point where we've got a full-time head sports scientist now, and then 2 part-time sports scientists helping him out. And we're looking at having maybe put another one on in the new year. So it's definitely, it was one of those gambles that did pay off, and we're pretty well known for the sports science side of things as part of Vision Health now.
Yeah, so you've got a fairly big team now. You've obviously diversified. You've got a couple of clinics, Toowoomba and Grafton. So what's the setup at each of those? Like, is Grafton a bit more of a satellite clinic, and the Toowoomba clinic, you've built your own one there?
That's right. Yeah. So we moved in to our new purpose-built clinic in Toowoomba here at the beginning of 2020. Perfect timing right before COVID hit, just to give us some added stress and banks and government shutting us down and whatnot. So yeah, it was a bumpy start when we first moved in. Previous to that, we'd had 10 or 12 years in the commercial gym, Willows, that Mike mentioned earlier, but just ran out of space in there. So now we've got this clinic. We've got 4 or 5 consultation rooms. Got 100 square meters of clinical EP space where we're doing the majority of our exercise physiology work. We've got a consultation room with a DEXA machine in that we do body composition analysis and a little bit of leg length scanning as well for some podiatrists. And then we've got another 100 square meters of clinical space on the other side, which is their sports science area. So kitted out with all the rigs and weights and sleds and boxes and kettlebells and anything else that you can imagine, required in such a facility. So that's our Toowoomba space now. We've been in here coming up on 3 years, which is pretty scary to think that we've been in here for 3 years, or are looking forward to being here for another 20, hopefully. And then our Grafton clinic, we have our clinic manager down there, Matthew Cameron. He's the current practicum supervisor of the year from ESSA. So he does great work down there. He's got an awesome little team of 1, 2, 2.5 full-time equivalents underneath him. And they work out of a facility, out of a gym there, but do a lot of branch work into the Lower Clarence, out into places like Townsend and, surrounding Lower Clarence area, and a little bit of work out some medical centres in and around as well. So it's a little bit more regional than what we have here, but they service quite a large area and a large, population as a result of where they are situated.
Yeah, well, part of my chats, saying in the past episodes, is discussing how people got into business and sort of how they started and what the pros and the cons are and stuff like that, to hopefully encourage people to go into business. Hopefully it doesn't discourage too many people. But, how did you first go into business in general? Like, why didn't you just why did business work for you instead of just...
For me personally, I was an employee, out of uni, into the gym, getting paid $15 an hour, opening at 5 a.m., closing at 9 p.m., going home for a sleep in the middle, pulling in $400 or $500 a week, and not seeing the clientele that I wanted to see specifically. So a lot of weight management, a lot of make me big and buff, and a lot of kids wanting to be super athletes, which just wasn't my niche. And that led me into the rehabilitation stuff. And then, once work cover Queensland, Medicare, DVA, and everything started to come on, that was my little light bulb moment to say, let's give this a bit of a run. And I most definitely looked around to see if there was, an opportunity for employment. But, back in those days, there wasn't, because we were at the forefront of it. It was either, if you want to work in this industry and with this population, you're going to have to do it yourself, or tag into someone and try and get them to support you to do what you want to do. And that's essentially where I started at the personal training studio. Was, I'll do some personal training work for you, but I want to build this as a side arm. And Troy at the time, he was our business partner. He saw the value in it, and he saw that, the potential, especially in Toowoomba, for us to build something pretty big, and especially get in at that entry level, in Toowoomba. So that was probably where I was influenced, is that I really didn't have a choice. If I wanted to work in the industry, I had to do it. I had to start it myself. Yeah, with the partner, and then building it like we did with Mike coming on board, and then it just kind of accelerated after that. And we almost fell into the size that we are now. It wasn't by any immediate design. It was like, let's just work, get our name out there, impact as many people as we can. And then all of a sudden our books were full. Mike and I were punching in 40, 50, 55, 60 hours a week in some weeks. And then we're like, we can't do this forever. Let's bring someone in. And that's where vision then became its own little beast.
Yeah. And you, Mick, you obviously came in and after your prior placement, I think it was, and you went straight into business, or you worked with Adam for a little while before you jumped on the other side. How did that work out? Just going from working for him to with him?
Yeah, mate, it was almost like I tripped on a rock, and next thing I was owning a business. Like it literally happened that quickly. I was in the industry for 12 months with my provider number before I was out at the first point in time in my own business, working alongside Adam, taking all my own payments and whatnot. And then always August 2009 sticks out as the date that I bought into what was K&M Exercise Physiology. Our clients kind of all went inside that. To say I didn't have a choice is probably a bit rich, but I kind of didn't. They offered the job. I had one job in Caboolture, which is sort of out the back of the Sunshine Coast, working in a retirement home. And the other job was moving to Melbourne to do corporate health checks. So they're the two options I had outside of let's back myself and see where this thing goes back in 2008.
And you wouldn't change it for the world? Neither of you would go back into being an employee at any point?
I don't think I could. And the reason I say that is because I've never been there before, professional working for someone else. And I just don't know how I would go.
I was already thinking that's going to be the answer. I think once you get to a point in business ownership, you'd be a pretty shitty employee, I reckon. You got too many ideas and too many of your own directions and things that you want to do. And you're used to having a level of control that comes along with the risks that you take.
I think I'd be lying if I said I don't think I ever have thought about it. There's definitely times when, the stress of owning a business, looking at the numbers, making sure everyone's getting paid, doing this, doing that, making repayments, paying rent, where that just builds up to a point where you think, let's sell. And Mike and I have had this discussion, like, let's go. But then you do snap back into reality and you go, well, we are flexible working times. We think, go and watch the kids at school. We can go pick them up from school. We can, make sure that we're there for our family now when we're needed. There's a sickness or something. So I don't think I could sit in a cubicle. I don't think I could work underneath someone for long term. But I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, it's just there's something about building your baby and seeing it flourish that you just don't want to give up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone that's gone into business ownership and been in it for a couple of years have thought about just, flipping the table and walking away, to use that metaphor. But then, something happens, it changes, and, you're trying to delay gratification in the short term for the long-term gains. Because, it is a massive risk. It's mortgaging your own personal life, your entire finances, and putting your own person on the line for something bigger than you. But it's definitely a real big challenge to go through it, but worth it once you get a number of years down the line. I think it's only now that I'm able to sort of duck away to see the kids. And, I went to one of my daughter's concerts in the afternoon. I'm able to do that now because there was that 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 hours or whatever it was from week to week. It was minimum 40, up to 100 in some weeks. So it wasn't all rosy, especially during months and COVID, because you're thinking, what am I? Everything's unknown, but there's protections in place for employees, but there's really no protections in place for employers. You're allowed to pay yourself under minimum wage if the business can't afford it. But we do need people that want to be employees, and they're really useful to your business. You want people that want some level of ownership, and you want various people. So it's not to say that everyone needs to be a business owner, but it does take a definite type of personality that you can develop over time, because you do need people that, look, I just want to come in, do my job and go home. And I'm happy with that, because especially when you've got a team the size of yours, you need different personalities that can sort of cover all bases.
Yeah, most definitely. And we, as you mentioned, we've got a large team, but they're all individual. Everyone's got their own issues. Everyone's got their own, space where they want to be investing their time and their effort. And it's good to see a lot of these new grads coming through, jumping onto that early. Yeah. Back in the day, it was everyone's a general practitioner. Everyone's kind of working with everything. Whereas we got guys that are 3 or 6 months out going, hey, look, I really want to focus on some shoulder rehabilitation or some Parkinson's disease, or I really want to work in this world a little bit more. So it's good that these kids are confident enough in where they are. I suppose that they're looking at specializations and wanting to be the best practitioner within that specialization. And whether we're just a vehicle to help them get to a certain point and then they move on, but so be it. In the end, they're getting great experience. They're impacting our community positively as well. And then looking at spreading their wings off the back end.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something before, Mick, just about you couldn't find work or the work available didn't really suit you. And you obviously said the same thing. Adam, that was the same as me. I couldn't find the job that I wanted. It was really like case management or, working in corporate or something like that. I wanted to work in private practice. So I just knocked on the local gym and said, hey, do you have a room for me? And they said yes. And I just used their gym floor as well as my own room and built up my own client base from there. And then we developed that into my own facility here. I have noticed there's a big change in what's available to EPs in the future is really bright, because I don't think there was anywhere near the level of opportunity, understanding. Like, I've still got a bit to go, but there was very little understanding and opportunities for EPs over a decade ago. But I think that's definitely changed. And now EPs are able to niche down early on, and I think that's going to provide a lot of benefits. So obviously, guys like yourself just providing opportunities to 14 or so EPs, or at least above 10. That in itself, like, that's providing great opportunities. But the future's bright for EP, I guess, is where I'm going.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, and when you look at that comparison from when you and I graduated through to even when Mike graduated, there was progression, let alone, 5 years ago. And we're at a point now where, it's really difficult for us in Queensland anyway, to get an EP. I used to get 10, 15, 20 resumes at the end of each uni year, graduates looking for work. Yeah. We wouldn't even look at them. They're the guys that we would be offering work to would be people that we'd seen work, that come in and sat down with us and done practicum experience or clinical hours, and, maybe volunteered some time with some of our group staff or whatnot. Whereas as nowadays, with the plethora of opportunities that are out there, if you find a good practitioner, even in the student years, you've got to look at starting to talk about giving you a position before they even graduate, just to snavel them, just to get them back in. So it's definitely evolved, and will continue to, hopefully, and that's only a good thing for the industry, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. All of my staff here have been through networking. Not one of them has been through a traditional hiring process. The last one that we hired, she was on an earlier episode. We spoke about her student experience as both a student and also as a practitioner. She was the best one to chat about it, because she just started like 3 weeks in. I said, hey, you've been on the podcast. And she didn't have a choice. She's like, okay. but we spoke about her student experience and everything like that. We hired her straight off the back of that. And same as the person prior to that, everything's been through networking. So is that probably your main advice, is network? Because I don't know about you, but the traditional hiring process for me hasn't worked, or I prefer to see people work and then know how they work. Great students, you'd expect them to be great practitioners.
Oh, most definitely. If you can see someone in a clinical setting, building rapport, communicating, being kind, you'll lead towards that better than a really good looking resume, I believe. And that's just speaking from my hiring experience over the past 12, 15 years. We've had some doozies, I'll be the first to say that we've hired on a resume and said, this resume looks good. The interview was really good. And then kind of a year, 2, 3 later, was shaking my head, slapping myself, thinking, what the hell did you do? But that's how we live. That's how we learn. And I'd say all but maybe one employee again since then has been a student through us. And that was purely because of, this other one was purely because we needed someone. We had people leaving. We had Mike and I back on the floor for a hell of a lot more than we wanted to be. And we needed someone to take some clients immediately. And that's faring out okay. So yeah, I think the network side of things, you need to know people, I think, before you throw them on a floor.
So I guess the advice from that is if you're a student going to a placement, don't just try to tick the box. It is an extended job interview. And that's what I've said in the past as well. You can tell immediately the students that come in and whether they're going to be decent EPs or not from about day one, I reckon.
Most definitely. Either. It's about, can they talk to a patient? Can they build a rapport quickly? You know, those students that come in and they light up a room and they have no issues talking to patients on day one. I'd probably speak for myself a little bit, but we don't really care what their clinical knowledge looks like. If they can regurgitate a book back to us or not. You know, if they can sit there and show empathy and build a rapport with that patient, you know, quick, smart, they're probably the most important things that I believe that we look. And
yeah, me too. I don't think you're saying anything that's new. That's exactly what I've said in the past as well. Hire on attitude and train on skill. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything new there, because you can easily learn the skills, especially if they're newer. You don't expect them to know everything straight from the outset, but if they're quick to learn and they can talk to the clients and get them to, you know, understand, build rapport and all of that, everything else will come very quickly over time. But if they don't have that from the outset, it's pretty hard to build a good attitude.
you can't teach it.
Yeah, no. So what's the future for Vision Health? You've obviously got a couple of clinics. You're expanding. Are you full? Have you maxed out your current size yet?
It's close.
Yeah, so it is. It's pretty close. Floor space is the biggest thing. You know, probably within 12 months of us moving into our new facility, we needed more floor space, and that's a good problem to have. I'm not going to say we don't want to get bigger, but I'm pretty comfortable where we are size-wise at the moment, especially in our Toowoomba clinic. Grafton has the opportunity to get a little bit larger, but we'd have to look at building into our own clinic space there and get them out of the gym settings. It just gets a little bit busy in there. So for the clinical side of things, they just need a little bit of private space, I think, more so than, you know, doing rehabilitation inside of a 1980s metal gym, which is essentially what Big River is up there. But it's a great facility and it enables us to service the population at the moment. So, yeah, I wouldn't say no, I wouldn't say never, but, you know, we'd have to build a building twice as big as we are here. And I don't know if I'm over the stress of the last build, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, what do you put your success of Vision so far down to? Like, what's your advice for other EPs that want to be successful?
Dive in. Don't be scared. You've got to go in, you know, balls deep. You really do. You can't go in half-assed with it. You can feed me out with those if you need to. But that's the best honest advice I can give. And that's the only reason that Mike and I have got Vision to where we are now, is that we've invested in ourselves, both financially and emotionally, and trusted ourselves, trusted each other 110%. When we've sat down, we've made that decision together, and then we've gone balls to the wall to reach that goal. So you've got to have something that you're aiming for and then try and exceed it. You know, that's what I mean by going balls deep. Just don't mess around with it. Yeah.
Just hard work and commitment, I guess.
That's probably a better way of saying it. Yeah.
You say it however way you want. I don't think I've beeped out anything in any of the episodes. So there we are. Mick, anything more to add?
Probably not. I really know. You just have to dive in, like, really, and get to it. I mean, we've got the ability now to say no to things that are going to take us away from where we're trying to go. But in the early days, it was yes to everything, and then try and figure it out. So we didn't have the ability to say no. But so that's been nice. Obviously, once we've been able to build it to a point where things are going to take us away from the direction that we want to go in, you know, we can easily say no to them. But early days, an opportunity came along. Yep, we can do it. We haven't done it before, but let's figure it out now. So.
You said yes to some stuff that you probably should have said no to, I imagine.
Oh, probably weekly, daily.
You know, I can sympathize with that one, because you do want to take on everything, especially if you don't have a lot of clients to begin, or you're not full and you obviously made a lot of commitment on your overheads. You obviously don't want to say no to some things, but then some things cannot work out because they actually take more time and energy and effort. You don't enjoy it because it's not the direction that you want it to go, and it's also difficult to service and to get off the ground. So, you know, but I don't think I've said yes to most things in the past, but yeah, it is about what you say no to at some point as well. And it's still a hard conversation to have or thing to say no at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't like hearing it. Adam says it to me a fair bit.
He doesn't like hearing it either. When fixing's onto a banger. Yeah, I'm going to talk him off.
So-
Talk him off that diving board a few times a week. It's good.
Yeah, so there's obviously, we all have failures before successes. Is there anything that really stands out that you're like, oh, we stuffed that up, but we learned from it and then now we're better for it? Is there anything that sort of stands out?
I think there's been any major catastrophe. Most of them have been avoided, I think, up to date.
Yeah,
You're still in business, so that's good news.
yeah. Oh, there's definitely been programs that we've dived into and started that 3-6 months down the track we've retracted from, or battled it out until it died its own little natural death. But nothing that maimed the rest of the business by any means. And as Mike said, in those early days, we'd have taken whatever was thrown at us, and whether it yielded positive monetary results or not really wasn't the point. It was more about building up that network and that relationship and saying, hey, these guys, this is their world. They work in health, or they work in movement, or they work in sport, and if we've got something, we'll throw it at them. Yeah. And as Mike alluded to earlier, the more of those things that you take on board, whether they fizzle out and die, the more opportunities you're going to get. It's people coming at you again. Yeah. And eventually you'll get a diamond. Yeah. And we'll build on that. And then it will become a significant part of what we do, both as a business culture or something, a service that we offer, or as part of our underlying values as well.
Yeah, it's definitely stuff that I've done in the past, or somewhere, a program that I've done, or somebody that I've networked with that, now 5 years later, nothing came of it at the time, you met them, things like that. Nothing came of it, but then your name comes up, or they remember you because you've crossed paths again, or an opportunity came up where you became relevant to them, or vice versa. So I wouldn't say that any opportunity to network and try a program is a total failure, because you can learn from it, or then it can pay off or provide some sort of benefit in the future in another way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So where can anyone that's looking online find you? Where can they go to check you out?
We're on most social media platforms. So we've got a really, really strong presence on Facebook and Instagram, both with our Vision Exercise Physiology page and our Vision Sports Science page, our pages. Our Grafton Clinic, they have a VEP, Clarence Valley, I believe, that they post a lot of their local stuff on down there, and obviously our website as well. I think we've leaned away from some of the other platforms a little, but got a younger generation coming in now that can do the TikToks and whatever else there is. I'm not sure. My year-old daughter's trying to get me on the TikTok, but I'm holding strong.
So we're going to see you dancing on TikTok or lip syncing soon enough?
Definitely not on my own channel. I might make a cameo appearance on the daughters every now and then. It'll take a couple of rums for that to happen.
All right. We'll be looking out for it. Anything else you boys want to share?
No, I think that's it, mate. Thanks for having us on. Really, really good.
No worries. Thanks for jumping on, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Ed.